hello everybody. I am so excited to do this, and the timing of this just gives me goosebumps. We've actually got our first eclipse in like 3 hours from the taping of this, so that is just way cool. Let me share my screen. I've got a lot of content to share, and I'm going to hit the ground running here, so bear with me for a second. And you should see my screen. Let me do some. Okay, endings before beginnings, human design and astrology guidance for today's world. My goal here is to kind of give you guys the tools and the timing to try to make the best of this. I know we're in a really, really tough world these days. So if I can do anything to help, I'm going to jump right out there. I don't normally do these Facebook Lives. I don't normally show my face, maybe 2 or 3 times a year. So we're going to get going. I want to do some house cleaning up front. I am going to blaze right through this. I'm not going to take any breaks to ask questions. If there's time, I've got a ton of content to give you guys. If there is time, I will share at the end, and we will take questions at the end. Do put your questions in there. I'm not going to take any personal questions on personal charts. I would appreciate the questions to be about the content. I would highly suggest that you, instead of taking notes, that you write down the time on your piece of paper of an area that you really want to pay more attention to. That gives you the opportunity to go back and look at it, because it is recorded and it will be up on the Facebook page. So it seems to me that's probably the best way to do it. I'm going to try my best to keep an eye on the time. And I'm going to concentrate mostly on the astrology. Karen has such absolutely amazing weekly updates with the human design piece that, and both of us, I mean, she covers astrology and I cover human design, but I'm going to concentrate today mostly on the astrology piece. A little bit about me. I have been an astrologer for, I almost don't even want to say this, for almost 5 decades now. Yeah, I'm an old lady. And I've had my hands in human design for probably 4 to 5 years. I am in human design. I am a 2-4 generator with the right angle cross of unexpected. And astrologically, my sun and moon are both in Scorpio, and I have a Gemini rise. That's probably too much information, but I'll get questions later, so we'll get that out of the way right away. Cindy is going to be working hard behind the scenes. She's going to be putting the links that I talk about. If there's some quotes and books and so forth, and you'll get those links in the comments. And I have, I'm going to try and get to the point of where I'm sharing a current event chart at the very end of this, because it came to my attention last night at 10:30 and I added it on. So let's jump in here. Let's just get started. Cocktails and constellations. It's a rabbit hole area. We'll talk about that. All these charts that I'm working on are in Greenwich, England time. So these dates that you're seeing for the eclipses are, I mean, depending on where you're at in the world, you would want to check to see exactly. Like England time is going to be way different from Asia, right? So it could be a different day in your part of the world. We're going to cover this eclipse season, which is extremely powerful, and you're going to get the drift of that by the time we get to the middle and 3/4 of the way through this. It's just jaw-dropping. Astrologers have been talking about this particular year just because of the Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter conjunctions in Capricorn, but there's so much. I mean, we could go on for hours with this. So I'm just going to jump right ahead here and try to blaze through these. A solar eclipse is when the moon comes between the Earth and the sun. And the lunar eclipse is when the moon is in the Earth's shadow. And I for myself, I always get these confused. And so I assume everybody else does too. You might be all over it, but the shadow area, the penumbra and numbra area is when the moon is, how do I explain this? On paper, on screen, you're seeing a two-dimensional depiction of it. In real time, we are in a third-dimensional world. When that alignment isn't perfectly on, you're going to get a partial eclipse. So the best way that I found to kind of explain this is to show you the sun's path around the Earth, and absolutely this is not to scale, right? But the lunar path that goes around the Earth is called the elliptical plane. And when you look at this, you're looking at the points that they meet, the points that they come together. Now, it's not a real hard position like a planet in the sky. It is a point in the sky. And I think astrologer Rick Levine explained it really well when he said you can throw two pebbles into a pond at the same time, 10 feet apart, and they're going to make ripples. And where those ripples meet, that's going to form another ripple of its own. And that is the point of where the north node and the south node. Now the north node is where the elliptical path goes above the sun's path, and of course the south node is the descending node. Eclipses happen when these two paths are very, very close to the sun and the moon, when these paths come together. So you will see in the upper upper left-hand corner, the circle with a cross in it is in astrology and human design it represents the Earth. The Earth point is always opposite from the sun's point, and you'll see that in some of the astrology charts. It's not as obvious in human design. The north node looks like a pair of over-the-head headphones, and the south node is, I always look at the south node as a bucket of what you're bringing in and what you've mastered in the past, and the north node is the direction that you're going to be going towards in this lifetime. Now you can see on the diagram in the upper right how the elliptical path of the moon kind of can differentiate depending on its path and how it's orbiting. Okay, come on, clicker, work for me. Uh-oh, am I frozen? I think I'm frozen. I'm going to pop out of here for just a second. Okay, Cindy, this is not letting me move. Oh, there it is. Ooh.
Yes.
Let's go. I don't know if it's my internet that is slow, but the previous picture, if I can go back, let's see, there we go. The previous picture shows the dates of this particular eclipse season, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. I just wanted to have a visual so that you guys could understand. We're in a full moon right now. When the moon is shedding full light on us, everything is exposed. When it goes down to the new moon and gets dark, that is the time for planting seeds. And then the following lunar eclipse is when that will be fully realized. I know a lot of people understand the the energies of the moon, and it's always a time of journaling your intentions on the new moon and then working towards them so that they can be manifesting as the moon gets full. Eclipse season is like the moon on steroids, and the effects are much broader, much longer, much more intense. So it's very important to pay attention to this particular time. Now, I want to lay some groundwork here for people that aren't familiar with astrology. From time to time, I'm going to be referring, and I don't even know I'm doing this. It comes so natural to me, but up above the challenging box, you see the astrology wheel, and on the inner wheel, there are numbers 1 through 12 counterclockwise. Those represent the houses. I'm not going to get into the descriptions of the houses, but lots of times I will say, if you look in the 3rd house, you'll find the sun. So we'll use it as a locator for this right here. Now, on the left, a conjunction and a semi-sextile depends on the energy that you're going to experience depends on the planets involved. When Saturn joined up with Pluto, you can expect a lot of the social restructuring and a lot of the things going on that you're seeing in the news. This particular conjunction here is at 0 degrees Cancer. That is the eclipse that's happening on the summer solstice. It doesn't matter if the conjunction is at 3 degrees Scorpio, both of them are at 3 degrees. That's also a conjunction. In astrology, we use an orb of about 8 degrees, meaning when it is applying 8 degrees coming up to that conjunction or going after that conjunction, that is the time of influence, getting the strong point at the exact conjunction. The harmonious aspects are 60 degrees and 120 degrees. And the challenging aspects, I say challenging, they're tense, they're hard. We wouldn't have any growth without the challenges. So it kind of spurs us into really, getting off our couch and doing something about whatever it is that is in front of us. Now, the square you will see as a geometric angle to the opposition, which in this case, the opposition is the sun and the moon or a full moon. I'm going to be talking later about an inconjunct, and normally I wouldn't bring this in, except it's very, we've got some inconjuncts going on. The energy that it brings is that there's a trying to bust out of the norms of whatever is happening at the current time because there's something better on the other side of the walls of the box. And 150 degrees in a chart is like 30 degrees away from where the moon is positioned in the 9th house there. So we're going to be looking at that throughout the rest of this presentation here. So let's look at today's chart. This is 8:12 p.m. Greenwich time, 3 hours from this particular moment. It happens at 5:12 Eastern, 4:12 Central, 3:12 Mountain Time, and 2:12 Pacific. And if you notice, my yellow, long yellow box or stick there, that you see the sun and the moon opposite. You see the nodes, you see this, the moon and sun are close to those nodes, even though they're not exact. That is a partial or a pulse lunar eclipse. We have the sun. If you look at the small colored boxes that circle the astrology chart, you have all those numbers. Those correspond with gates and in the human design chart. So the sun is going to be in gate 35, and the earth, moon, are in gate 5. And the tricky part of this particular point in time is that Mars, which is the circle with the arrow going off to the side, Mars brings in an energy of, to be blunt, to use my Scorpio bluntness, Mars is a warrior. He's a fighter. He's full of anger and full of rage. The higher energy of that is the strength to be a real leader and a real forerunner of what needs to be changed. Now, this is in a what we call a T-square, and to this particular full moon, and you don't have to be an astrologer to realize what our world is going through, and it is planet-wide. So that happens in the head center in human design, and we're going to get into that a little bit more in a minute. Karen's most recent weekly update talked about this, and she was absolutely amazing with it. This particular channel in human design is it's the channel of rhythm. It's about logic and understanding, gives direction to life. It's aligning with nature and natural order. A lot of activists will have this particular channel. But when you look at Mars, that feisty, fiery energy in gate 63 of doubts and curiosity, it's definitely a blend of that warrior mixed in with inspiration. And even though it feels like those energies are far away from that heart center, there needs to be a heartfelt celebration when you do finish those accomplishments that Mars forces you into accomplishing. You want to be aware of just really sinking into that doubtful feeling or being suspicious. So I want to change gears here just a little bit, and you're going to see how this plays in a minute. The Great Attractor, I don't know how many people have paid attention to the Great Attractor in our solar system, and I'm asking you to think really big and wrap your head around something that scientists don't even know exist. The only way that they know it exists is because of the effect that it has on the area around it. So the Great Attractor is about 150 light years away from us, but it's like a big, huge magnet, and it's pulling our galaxy and other galaxies towards it. Now, and I'm sure Cindy's probably already got loveyourdesign.com in the comments, but Kim Gold has a really good article on that, as do other astrologers. Sedgwick, I've got his book title down here later. But the point about the Great Attractor is that it is a fixed position at 14 degrees Sagittarius, which is in gate 5. Now, gate 5 is a huge player in this current solar eclipse, lunar eclipse. I told you I always get those guys mixed up. I should just say eclipse. But the energetic values is that it is so strong that it's capable of bending light and warping time. And it has because it's this big magnet, it has this pulling effect as well. How that shows up personally for people that have a planet conjunct that 14 degree Sagittarius or gate 5, that they will show up in the world as somebody that and they don't know how they magnetize people to them, but they do. They find themselves in circumstances that are bigger than they are. They have usually some kind of a polarizing effect, as in you walk into a room and some people instantly like you and some people instantly don't. It's an absolutely magical area to read about. And I do want to read what's in blue here. The correctness of a political, social, philosophical, or intellectual quest all falls subject to the same intense draw. Initially, we need to know how life really works, creates the best engraved invitation one might ever see. Curiosity creates a consciousness of choice, and according to the Great Attractor, it's worth risking personal rightness and righteousness. And Philip Sedgwick has, I think it's 3 books out on in this particular series, definitely worth looking into. Okay, not to be fast, but moving on. The new moon, the summer solstice, the solar annular eclipse. This happens at 0 degrees Cancer, and eclipses are powerful on their own, let alone being on the summer solstice. And I'm going to go into this chart quite a bit here. I'm trying to keep an eye on the time because I want to get through everything, because there's an amazing set of charts at the very, very end I want to share. But let's digest this one for a bit. We have the sun and the moon and the north node both in gate 15. You add to that this conjunction of planets up in Capricorn and Aquarius, which Saturn, the little H with the cross on the top, is Saturn, and the right to the right of Saturn is Jupiter, that 4. Anytime Jupiter is involved in anything, it expands things, good or bad. It's a magnifier type of planet. It is definitely the planet of blessings in astrology and human design. It is seen as very benefic. However, when it mixes with a couple of players that are not quite so benefic, it expands that as well, which is why astrologers have been watching this particular conjunction. Now, currently, these guys are all in retrograde, and we are heading into a retrograde season, which I'm not going to expound on a whole lot, but it's worth mentioning that at one point we're going to have 5 planets in retrograde, which is a time to go within and revisit all of the issues that are going on for us. So I'm telling you, it's an intense year, and it's not going to let up. So let's look at Jupiter in gate 61, conjunct with Pluto. It falls, it joins, it makes a channel that joins the head center and the ajna. And I know there are people here that don't understand some of the lingo with the human design and vice versa for astrology. So just bear with me. Hopefully you can kind of read between the lines and get the energetic meanings of these guys. And I'm going to go over these in just a minute here. I also want to bring in Uranus, which is in gate 24. Now, astrology doesn't show that these two are necessarily angular and triggering each other, but in human design, they form a gate. So that gate is one of the things that's really key. First of all, Pluto and Uranus don't move very fast. Pluto and Uranus have a real combustible sort of energy. Pluto's about power. Uranus is about change and doing it suddenly and in a very rebellious way. To give you an example, those 2 planets were in conjunction in the late 60s and early 70s when you had all those riots going on about the, what was it, the Vietnam War? I should know that. I lived through it. I was like in my early 20s at that point. But that's the kind of energy that they bring in. It's an energy of change. It's an energy of power struggles. And I kept thinking to myself, just looking at the chart, I'm going like Uranus has got to be a player in this. Well, I'm seeing it in the 6124 channel. Another player that we're looking at is Saturn, and Saturn is in gate 60 of finding new ways to resolve old problems. So you can see how this is a map of exactly what is going on here on our planet, or vice versa. Who knows? Who knows if it's the, you know, cart before the horse or not, but it definitely makes a difference. So the one thing worth looking at is Eris. Now, a lot of people don't know Eris if you're kind of a beginner. Eris is a disruptor, and it's currently at 24 degrees Aries. So it is square in astrology to the Jupiter-Pluto-Saturn mixture. And Eris it's a female energy, but it is the warrior goddess sort of thing. And being that square angle, you're going to expect a lot of discord. Now, we're getting ready the end of this month for Mars to go into Aries, which is where Eris is located. So with those two, Mars being in Aries, Aries is his home sign, so he's feeling extra feisty, extra warrior-like, not willing to compromise. And when Eris gets in, when it reaches the point of 24 degrees Aries, it's going to be fireworks. I guarantee it. Not that we haven't had fireworks yet, but it's going to be an interesting summer. Another point that I want to make here is that Mars is one of the planets that's going to go retrograde. He's going to go retrograde in his own sign. He's normally through a sign in 6 weeks, and it's going to take him 6 months to get out of that sign because of the retrograde process. So we're in for the long haul here. Another point worth making is that Chiron is at a 30-degree semi-sextile angle with Uranus, which brings in that healing aspect. We're needing to look at our wounds. This is what it's so clear when you look out and see what's happening all over, especially in the United States, but it's all over the planet. And yep, it's going to be a long year, and actually it's going to go into 2021 and on towards 2022. Saturn, as you can see on the description on the right, the little picture on the right, Saturn is forming a 150-degree angle or quincunx to this eclipse, and it is exact. Saturn is at 0 degrees Aquarius, and of course the eclipse is going to be at 0 degrees Cancer. Saturn has an energy of, there's a restriction to Saturn. There is a slow down and take it step by step sort of thing. But Saturn's also about doing the work. It's about burning off the old of what no longer serves us, and step by step building a new future. With all the turmoil that's going on, we're starting to realize that the turmoil is necessary because the old ways are no longer serving us. We need to get to the new ways and create a new world for ourselves. And just the fact that it's in, Saturn is in gate 60, there's no doubt that restructuring a new world is at hand. So there's more here to the summer solstice chart. If you look on the human body graph, the gate 10 and gate 20 are forming a channel. Now, that is the Earth and the South Node, and gate 10 is like about looking at your values, looking at your own self-worth. And who's in gate 20? But Venus. Venus is all about, you just can't make this stuff up. Venus is values. We're having to examine those values. We're having to restructure those values. And Venus is also about money. Venus is also about relationships. So she's a big player in this. And currently she is retrograde in Gemini. Gemini is about communication. So it is important that we really use, especially with Mars positioned where it's at, it's especially important to watch our words so that our words are adding value to other people. In human design, this is called the gunslinger channel. In other words, if you feel it, you speak it, and it can slay everybody around you, or it can instantly support people around you. The choice is ours. And it happens so quick that most of the time people, if a person has this in configuration in their own human body graph, lots of times it comes out before they even think because it's what they feel. But I'm asking you to be conscious, conscious of how you treat other people. And this is called the channel of awakening. So there's a lot going on for summer solstice, and it is so important that we open up and shed light on all of this stuff right now during the full moon, so that by the time we get to the summer solstice, we are ready to really write down those intentions or document them somehow, or hold them in our heart, or whatever it is that you need to do. Use the energies that are on hand. They're stirring up the world, but as much destruction that there is going on out there, there's equally the opportunity for reconstruction. So hang in there, people. Yeah, you don't fight the old reality, you create a new one. So let's look. You know, lately I've been tagged on Facebook for all these reoccurring events that are happening and how the astrology works with them. And with eclipses, they work in 19-year cycles. So I couldn't help myself, but I had to go research the summer solstice in June of 2001. And what we have, and you'll see the sun and the moon conjunct, Cancer, 0 degrees. The big player here is Saturn, Jupiter is conjunct. And of course, Jupiter enlarges things. So pay attention to what is across from that area, 180 degrees opposite. When you look at Jupiter that is at 25 degrees Gemini, you'll notice that 180 degrees opposite is Chiron at 25 degrees. And lo and behold, Mars, the warrior, is right next to Chiron, that K with the circle below it. Chiron is the wounded healer teacher. And so wounds were being exposed at that time. There was probably some definite fireworks going on because Mars is in the mix. Jupiter expands all this stuff again. So what happened in 2001? You had the 9/11 attacks. You had a huge earthquake in India. The human genome sequence was revealed, which I didn't even know about. I thought, and that's just like, that brings in the Chiron piece. You had the Israeli-Palestinian conflict that escalated, the Afghan Taliban regime collapsed. China entered into the World Trade Organization, and that's a subject again this year. And there was a worldwide economic slowdown. So you can kind of see the two. The defining difference right now is we have so many other aspects involved in this particular time that things are really coming to a head. There's just no doubt about it. So the third eclipse in this season is July the 5th. And I'm not going to play around a lot here. What I want you to look at is that the sun and the moon, the sun is in gate 39 and the moon is in gate 38. And you'll see off the root center is where this is located. The root center is the square at the very bottom of the human design body graph. And what is so amazing about this is that the gate 38 is about the vision to know what's worth fighting for. And 39, which is where the sun is at, is about recalibrating and transformation. So using these alone as a guidepost and setting our intentions towards that is definite. We're definitely supported to accomplish a whole new world. It's going to take some time. You don't just change a planet overnight. We're at the top of a wave right now, and that's a huge, huge wave, but we're getting there. And there is hope. That's what I see. You know, I look at all the turmoil that people are going through, and I really try to be a hermit. I've got that 2-4 profile in human design. I am a hermit. I like staying home. My impact on the world is through the internet with you know, teaching people what is going on astrologically and through human design. And you don't have to go out and be an activist to impact the world if it's not your journey. If it is, go for it. I fully support it. But just know that we're all here for changes. Okay, so what is cocktails and constellations? I have a girlfriend that I was telling her I was doing this program for you guys, and I said I'm going to try my best not to talk about politics because it's such a rabbit hole. And she said, Rebekah, how on earth are you going to do that? How can you? And I will say, I have like 5 planets in Scorpio, right? I certainly can get worked up over politics, but I try to rein that back so that I can explain to people the options that we have and the paths that are open to us. So what I did was I wanted to create a container for those rabbit holes. Now, my first envision was, it's a pilot program. We'll see how it goes. And I'm probably going to do it as a Friday afternoon happy hour type of thing. And I originally designed it for human design and astrology. It's going to be a dialogue of people. I'm not going to create slides. I'm not going to, I'll play the host, but I would expect everybody to speak up just as they would if they were going to happy hour. It's not going to be recorded. You wouldn't want to record a happy hour, or at least I wouldn't. But the bottom line is I don't want to be teaching. I want this to be a discussion. I want people to come together. I think it would be fun to talk about things. I had first kind of thought that we will have topics like we'll talk about the energies of Venus and the energies of Mars and the various planets and so forth. But I'm open to the word whatever, as long as it remains kind and respectful. So it can be a rabbit hole area. I try to keep those rabbit holes out of my presentations because I can so go there. I guarantee you, I can so go there. it's not, I'm not going to put a charge, so you don't have to sign up anywhere except on my web page. If you will sign up under the little book of life success secrets, that puts you onto my email list, and that's how I will send out the Zoom links to these constellation and cocktails and constellation sessions. I will, yeah, it's so funny. I've done a few free things from time to time, and in the back end, I get complaints about, we want to pay you something. Can't you just at least create something? So I will be sending out during that class, or I don't want to call it a class, but during cocktails and constellations, during the happy hour, I'll send out a link to where if you want to donate to support me in keeping my Zoom up and all that kind of stuff, that would be great. But I don't want it to keep people from not showing up, because I think it's important we have some dialogue and talk about what's going on. Some of the best ideas can come out of those sorts of sessions. So hop on my email list and fill out. By the way, if you download that book, there's a lot. That book is kind of a description of each one of the planets with examples with well-known people. So if you're interested in reading it, that might be something you want to explore. So we're going to move on. The next charts is what I put on here at 10:30 last night. And I see I've got about 15, 20 minutes left. So I want you guys to reach back into your brains and tell me, or put in the chat or whatever, what you think this event is. According to the date, it happened June 4th, which was anniversary date yesterday, which is what triggered me. 1989 in Beijing, China. It was the, and I always can't pronounce this, Tiananmen Square massacre. Now this particular chart, and I do have a human design chart at the very end of these, so that you guys that have Mercury in gate 48 and just can't get enough information, you can certainly look at the human design chart. I do have it here. This looks real cluttered and real busy. In my practice, which I don't do, I've kind of shied away from doing individual sessions with people, but I use a lot of the asteroids and so forth from time to time. But I took out a lot of the clutter to show you what is in that chart that really was a trigger point. In astrology, we look at angles and squares and grand trines and all this. Yod is that triangle that's composed of a 60 degree angle, which is a sextile between Pluto in the 8th house and Neptune and Saturn in the 11th. That is an easygoing angle, but the planets are pretty darn heavy. Then those two make a 150 degree angle or quincunx to the new moon and Jupiter, and there's Jupiter again. So Pluto up in the 8th house is about power struggles. It is reforming and transformation at the high end, but not without going through difficulties to get through there. The example that I use is, you have the fire, and Pluto is the phoenix exploding out of that fire and soaring into the sky, as only the phoenix can. Then you have Neptune, which is very nebulous. It's very spiritual, but it's like gossamer. It's also deceptive. There's also lots of times drugs with it. And then you have Saturn there. And at 12 degrees Capricorn, Saturn's in its own sign. It rules Capricorn. It really is saying, slow down, it's restrictive. We need to do some restructure here. But just between Pluto and Saturn, we know they've been conjunct in the sky, and that's what we've been talking about in Capricorn for the last, I don't know how long, especially astrologers are like, whoa, we've got a Pluto-Saturn conjunction. And then, of course, the finger of God part is where that new moon is happening. So new moon, new beginnings. You add Jupiter to the mix, and it absolutely explodes things wide open. Now, the second part of this that I want to show you is look at the lunar nodes. They were at that particular time, and when I looked on the internet last night, the only time that I could find was 1 o'clock in the morning on June the 4th. This went on for, 2 days, I think it was. I mean, it was leading up to it. There was a lot of protests leading up to it, but this was the huge conjunction of all this anger. So at that particular time, the North Node and the South Node were on the ascendant and descendant, which we haven't really talked about, but that is a point in the astrological chart that is very, very important, very, very relative. And so there's also the nodes bring in kind of a karmic aspect, as well as the Saturn piece. So I just found, when I looked at this chart last night, oh gosh, I was like just dumbfounded to find that there was that yod mixed in there. So anyway, this is the end slide that I have for you guys, and we still have some time for questions. I kind of blazed through all that, so I would expect you guys to have some thoughts on this. So I'm going to flip out of here and stop screen sharing.
There were some questions that came up earlier.
Okay, good deal.
And some comments. Okay, I think.
I hope I made sense in full sentences.
Oh, well, I think you did very well.
Oh, thank you. I have to tell you, when I found that thing 10:30 last night and got on my computer and put all that down onto paper and actually realized what was going on, I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about it and I got into this whirlwind of thinking about it, and I didn't get to sleep until 2 this morning. So I'm like, oh, I hope I can do this tomorrow. I hope I don't disappoint.
Well, I think you did it great. So fairly early in your presentation, Layla said, I feel time is sped up. The slide says 40 years of age. Why 40? Why not 27 to 30 for the Saturn return?
Which slide are you referring to?
Like I said, it was about 9 minutes into your presentation, so I would imagine.
Because it's not I wasn't talking about a Saturn return, so I'm not sure.
Well, just so you know, Leila it's her birthday on 5/22, so she has the 515 channel, and the synchronicities are popping off right now.
Yeah, they are.
And Carolyn asked, my Saturn is at the exact degree in Sagittarius. How can I work with it as a 4-1 generator?
Oh my gosh. I have to tell you, my South Node is at gate 5. And it's right there with the Great Attractor. So I totally get what you're dealing with. I would suggest going to Philip Sedgwick's web page and exploring that really deeply, because Saturn is about reconstruction. He wants to look at what's not working and take solid, firm steps towards what is. Now, with that being in that particular gate and conjunct that great attractor, when you do start working with the energies of Saturn, you're going to almost feel like you're in a flow that you can't stop, like it's bigger than you. And there's going to be people, you're going to polarize people. You just understand that what you're doing, that you don't understand even yourself how it is that you're in this flow. But there's going to be people that are on the far right and others that are on the far left with as far as what your position is. So just know that happens. And there's so much other things out there. Kim Gold did address that.
The Great Attractor. They have that link, and it'll be posted on the blog also when we go.
Yeah. It's important to look at that, I think.
So there are people that's saying the question might have been because of the lunar nodes. I think that was the 40-year. She was talking nodes for 40. Neil in Zoom asked Tiananmen, what is the relationship with the charts for the current events?
With the Tiananmen Square one, it was part of the 19-year lunar cycle, because these eclipses happen in cycles of 19 years. So in other words, there's not going to be another eclipse on the summer solstice for 19 years. So because they come in cycles like that, it's always important to go back and look at what happened in the last cycle. Now that last cycle, there was a lot of upheaval. You had 9/11, you had earth changes with the huge earthquake in India, you had genome discoveries, things like that. And so when you look at what we're going through today, definitely there's a lot of turmoil going on, but we've also got COVID, and it wouldn't surprise me one bit if being forced into this particular set of circumstances, that they're going to come out with some really, really amazing breakthroughs. And it could easily be, it could easily involve the genes. It could, who knows? As an astrologer, I don't predict, but I do see trends. So when you go back 19 years at the solar eclipse, then you look at the major changes going worldwide. There was, the finances were at a slowdown and all of that. It's easy to, when the next one comes up 19 years from now, we will look back at this one and go, this happened and this is what was going on. And we had a chance to really make some big breakthroughs and some big changes and so forth. It's just helpful to know the history when you're looking into the future.
Interesting enough, Peg says in Zoom, yesterday, due to the anniversary, check out Steve Bannon announces a declaration of a new federation for China. If this happens, it will move China towards a republic. And that happened yesterday. According to Peg. Bettina says, can't wait to dig deeper into the Great Attractor. Carol says, with all the activity now, Mercury retrograde, these eclipses, how is this time for medical dental work? Should we postpone until after Mercury goes direct and other past events? She has an appointment for 6/17 for dental work.
I can't tell you how many people I have had contact me because of health stuff. And it's a real question. and you have to be really careful. You have to go into this with your your eyes wide open. I would just, you can't not take care of yourself. You can't not have surgeries that are needed. I think having a frame of mind that is envisioning, and this might be something you want to work on, as far as sitting yourself down and really digging deep in yourself and knowing the feeling of that having been accomplished with ease and leaving you healthy afterwards. We have to use all the tools we've got, and it starts from inside, especially when it's a personal thing like that.
So it's not just astrology, it's checking with your own inner. That's
absolutely.
Very good. Thank you. I'm going over to Facebook. Melinda says, can I ask about death, even sudden death and severe illnesses right now? I've had a number of close friends and family members lately die unexpectedly or have prognosis of end of life or very life-threatening diagnosis, all in the past month. Can you see this in the chart? Are souls choosing to leave right now? Thank you.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, I don't like to talk about this, but since you asked, first of all, Jupiter is a big player in any sort of death sort of circumstances. Pluto is a big player, especially, well, Pluto rules birth, death, and rebirth. So those guys are dancing in the heavens right now, and if that aligns with a personal chart, especially in astrology, because astrology, it's easier to see the timing of things than it is with human design. Human design gives amazing insight on a personal level. And you can also see the trends and the timing by the electromagnetics as well. But if these events are aligning up, and I will say it takes a whole, here's an example. Years ago, I had a client whose husband had a stroke. When I looked at his chart and I looked at the astrological transits on that day, there were 5 conjunctions in his chart, things lined up all the way around. Jupiter was not involved in any of those. Had Jupiter had been involved in it and really magnified all of that, there would have been a good chance that he would have crossed over to the other side, but he did not have that, and he survived and he was fine. He didn't have any paralyzing areas in his body or anything like that. So yes, you can. I'll tell you another story. I had an ex-boyfriend that sat me down and said, I want to know everything. And I told him, you're going to see somebody either leave your life or it doesn't always have to be death. So in my world, I try to frame it as getting rid of what doesn't serve you, and add to that it could possibly mean a death in your family circle. And his father passed away, and it just crushed me. So I try not to talk about that, but yes, it does show up, but there has to be a lot of really corresponding conjunctions and angles and so forth. Not just one, but multiple. Thank you for your question.
Interesting, but we have 2 more minutes. And Carol, just as a follow-up to her question, she says, I could delay my dental work if that's better. I could wait until after the eclipses and retrogrades. And if I remember your response to her question, it's, if when she goes within and is going, she can.
What I would say is, what was the date she had scheduled for? The 15th or something?
I'm scrolling back up. 6/17.
6/17. Here's the deal. the end of the month, Mars is going to go into Aries. And I would, if it were me, I would much rather carry through with what, I mean, I'd have to look at your chart and the transits and see exactly how that is playing out in your personal chart. But getting it done before Mars goes into Aries and then starts going retrograde, and this is going to last through, I think it's like November that he's going to be there for like 6 months, right? So I would say go ahead and get it done. Be careful, and use all the tools you can, and ask your, your dentist to, if there's any chance of infection or something like that, nip it in the bud, catch it right away. And I think you'll be fine.
Right at the top of the hour, I'm going to ask you, I just saw one more question come in from Cat 22. If the eclipse falls on my nodes, and I'm going to generalize it, or if it falls on any personal planet for anyone, what can they expect? I mean, if the eclipse falls directly on, in her case, it was on her nodes.
So that the nodes, I would have to see your whole chart and your body graph to get the whole picture, because just taking one piece out is really difficult. But if you were my client sitting in front of me, I would say take that time to really set good intentions. Take the energy to apply it to the directions that you want to go towards in your life, so that you're using that energy in a positive way. I would also say you might have some kind of karmic experience. You might feel purpose-driven, or run into a karmic relationship type of thing that you didn't expect. If it were me, I would just kind of lay low with that and just go within and really definitely look at,
And for everybody, it's kind of, if it falls on someplace on your chart, it's time to go within, just see how it's, I mean, would you recommend journaling? Would you recommend?
Oh, absolutely.
Just seeing, because
whatever works for you. There's the journaling. There's what I will often tell people to do, and usually when I see that somebody has really got an intuitive piece in their chart and they haven't been expressing that, I will tell them to write a question with their right hand and do the answer with their non-dominant hand or left hand, or whatever that would be. That might also be a really good way for you to get to your subconscious to bring out some of the journaling things that you would want to look at, because it's a karmic sort of energy, and lots of times it's hard to put our finger on, and writing with your non-dominant hand might help.
So, okay, so if they want to talk, I mean, these are all good cocktails and constellation things that people can come into, and it's free onto your Zoom for their afternoon happy hour.
Let's go down some rabbit holes together.
Because these are all lots of different rabbit holes.
Yeah, they are.
Do you have any
final words?
Final words to help us with this upcoming eclipse season windows?
Use the cycles. Things are exposed during a full moon. Just ask anybody that works in the medical profession or in the police departments or whatever. All the nasty comes out. So does everything that you have built. You show progress. The new moon is for planting seeds and then growing those seeds as the light grows stronger. So use the eclipse season as you would a regular lunar cycle. Just be aware that it's magnified. And I would suggest also keeping a daily journal, even if it's just a few words, to kind of track your emotions during all this, because 0 degrees Cancer. Cancer is about the emotions. The moon is about emotions, and people are going to get emotional, but you also want to track those emotions. So sit down and write, meditate. I highly recommend. Make sure you get exercise. Don't put on too much weight because that's very, very Jupiter. Jupiter expands everything, even your waistline.
And come do rabbit holes with you at Cocktails and Constellations.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you so much, Rebekkah.
Okay. Bye-bye.